Right, interesting. So there's a lot of intersection. It's not about just one factor, right? There are multiple factors affecting this. And yeah, really great points that you shared. And next off, I'd like to hear from you, what are some of the business impact, right, and competitive implications here, right? So just now you talk about the physical, digital, and biological realm. So now, what is the business impact and competitive implications? If manufacturers continue operating with their traditional linear business models, right? What happens to them over time versus if there is a way in which through sustainability or green practices they were to implement in the business, that could help them be more competitive. Is that so? Right? Many would then ask that question. Yeah. How would you sort of answer to such questions? Yeah. Who would like to go first?
Sure. I mean, that's a very great question as well, and I think this is also why we're actually using the circular economy as a strategic resilience lever, let's say, right? Because if you're looking at the supply chains, basically what you're doing is you're basing the entire economic system on a volume-based production system, right? Um, and for example, if your manufacturing operations are not using reuse loops, refurbish loops, if you're not using repairability of products, if you're not using the remanufacturing of products, then basically the cost reductions are associated, of course, with the procurement, right? Because otherwise you are buying all of these resources again, and you're not looping them in your own economic system. And so I think this is the main cost reduction in terms of material value that you're leaving on the table. If, for example, if you have a remanufacturing hub, or if you're using a product as a service model, for example, then you are looping between, or the product, you're looping between the producer and the user as well, right? And then basically, if you are providing, for example, product as a service via lighting, as Lijin has said, right? So you're upholding the value, you're maintaining the energy that is inherent in a product by, for example, renting that out, right? And then you're getting paid for the usage, which provides very liquid income streams because you can use the blockchain for that, for example, but that's maybe another topic. But you're getting paid for the usage. And then, for example, if the user does not use the product anymore, then basically you're getting back these resources. So you don't have to buy them. And the amount of value or the amount of costs that you need to actually then restore that product to original function is very, very low compared to that if you need to buy that again and then sell that again. So it's a different kind of growth, but it's a more resilient kind of growth. And I think this is where you can use that in supply chains for the reduction of waste disposal costs. You can use that for the reduced procurement costs. You can use that for indirect reputational advantages, which would then result also in revenue streams. And I think this, in general, I would say if you have a forward supply chain and then basically putting on all of your resources and not having, for example, a reverse logistics plan of it to get these resources back, and then doing something with them and then renting it out again, for example, I think you're leaving a lot of value on the table. And as Lijin already put, I think it's a 4.1 to $4.3 trillion business opportunity. And this is where you're actually then increasing your revenue by looping these materials back into your production and back into your own manufacturing.
Mm. Yep. And I think also another aspect that we need to consider is that competitiveness of the business. Like it or not, I think the geographical location of the business is going to play a big role moving ahead, right? So apart from the physical disruptions, because maybe some places are just more prone to typhoons, storms, and hurricanes and things like that. Apart from that, there is also the competitiveness of countries that people are putting in. So for example, and this was a point actually that Yasmin shared with me in our previous discussions, whereby in Vietnam, they have actually made it mandatory for companies to do product carbon footprints, right? And Vietnam is a big manufacturing sort of place. They manufacture a lot of things for the global global market. And the part of the reason why they would move in that direction is because they need to meet all these regulations around, let's say, the carbon border adjustment mechanism, around the sustainability reporting things. Now, the question is that if this is something that's mandated in specific countries, and these countries are your competitors, right? And they are getting support to achieve that. And in your own business, you not only have not gotten the support to do that, but you also are not proactively finding a way to do it. How long of a runway do you have as a business before you are replaced by suppliers from other countries? Right? It's the same thing as well when we look into Latin America. They are a big producer of foods in the world. They also have certain roles, I think, in sectors that would be covered by the CBAM. So fertilizer production, those sort of things as well. And they are getting a strong push in Latin America to use the circular economy as a way to gain competitive advantage and trying to win over more global market share, right? So at this point, you can say maybe it's nobody has the advantage yet. Nobody has the advantage yet, right? Because all of us are not quite there yet with the circular economy implementation. There's a lot of readiness that still needs to be done. No one even really knows how to do a product carbon footprint at scale, even though the technology is improving rapidly in the last 3 years or so. But all of us are at this stage whereby, hey, no one's better than anyone yet. But the question is, for how long? And does your business want to be the one that follows? Or are you going to be the one that sets the competitive barrier, right? So I think from that perspective, yeah, this proactiveness in pursuing ESG and sustainability is something that needs to be built in, because even just by seeing that proactiveness in a consistent, systematic way, you're actually setting yourself apart in the eyes of investors who are making decisions of whether or not you will be able to manage the risks that are oncoming, whether you can increase the upside potential returns for them, and whether or not they will be taking on a good bet on your company or putting it to another country. Right. And seen some examples as well. I mean, like what people say is unfair play by the Chinese government in terms of the renewable energy sector, the way that they pumped in so much subsidy and everything to get that solar panel price so far down that they outcompete everyone in the world. Right. So it's going to repeat again and again for every aspect of the sustainability realm, not just renewable energy realm, because there is a real pain of an existential crisis that we're facing as a human species. So regardless of whether it's fair or not fair, there are going to be governments that will work in certain ways to capture that market share in the global market, right? So I think that's something that we need to have a perspective on as manufacturers and innovators.